Welcome in to the latest episode of the NFL podcast with A_Schnicker and at the real_G Warner. We went 1-1 in our best bets last weekend. We're going to go through the entire slate of the Super Wildcard weekend. And I do have some history from last year's Super Wildcard weekend, which was very good to the both of us. I will get into that later once I figure out how to share my screen live on a recorded podcast that will go across all the interwebs at A_Schnicker. How are you doing on this Wednesday, January 8th?
I'm feeling great. We're at the point where we have like 18 football games left in the entire year. That's including three college football games.
Ooh.
So you gotta cherish them at this
I
point.
cherish them, and they actually mean something, which is nice. Unlike what felt like the entire Week 18 slate.
My
You
goodness.
won your best bet on the Pittsburgh Steelers, who get to come up on this show at some point.
Yeah.
It was routine, just an easy win. Uh,
Sure.
I gave out the Minnesota Vikings, which we'll get into those when we get to them, which we'll do soon. And I actually have our records from last year's Super Wild Card weekend. We went 3-0, and we were 9-1 last 10 entering into Super Wild Card weekend. 6-1, I guess, last seven. Improved to 9-1 last 10. Uh, and the winners were you had the Chiefs. We both had the Texans. I guess I was going through the streak there. And then I'll show that later, but that's probably not as relevant. We'll start in that early Shakey's game, as it's said on other podcasts if you listen to the NFL somewhere else, with the Los Angeles Chargers visiting the Houston Texans. The Texans were
Yeah.
in the spot last year. Chargers are 3-point favorites right now at home, or excuse me, on the road in Houston. Chargers 3-point favorites in Houston. Total is 42.5. What are we thinking about this one?
Well, the Texans own this Saturday afternoon spot. Whenever they
Oh,
make the playoffs, this is their spot. Um, so my initial reaction, we everything about CJ Stroud's slip, offensive line that can't protect, offensive coordinator that we're kind of just not really sure what he really is. That's all been documented. We've gone through that a lot. Most podcasts are talking about the kind of the fall of the Texans. Yet here we are, and the Chargers are kind of the darlings. So this is where we really nailed it last time, is looking at, like, as of right now, who is playing best. Because if I look at this number, I probably, like, if this were to get to 3.5, like, it would be a screaming, oh my gosh, this number is off. However, the concern there is just looking at these two teams and the trajectory of them and where they're headed. Um, doesn't really make me feel like I have any sort of passion or drive to take the Texans. Um, what do you? I just feel like there's a lot of mismatches there. I feel like there's a coaching mismatch. I feel like, um,
all right, let's break this down since we have a bunch of time for the six standalone games. Not as much, of course, as we will always run out.
yeah,
But Texans are at home. They have a real home field. So that's something to say the least. They're 3-point underdogs right now. If you give, let's say, 2 points for home field, even though the playoffs, you probably reduce that. We're basically calling the Chargers better than a field goal favorite away from home. I think that's pretty clear. They've got a great head coach, Jim Harbaugh, who has somehow wrangled a unwranglable quarterback into a really talented player who seems a lot healthier than he did earlier in the season. Plus, they have their running game, which actually is something with a running back versus their downgrade to Gus Edwards. So Dobbs is there. It didn't look great to me in the last game against the Raiders, but it was enough to win and get them in the playoffs and get them the 5 seed, which is really important to play the Texans and not not the Ravens on the road. You talk about, I guess the Texans' strengths are Nico Collins in the passing game, Joe Mixon scoring touchdowns, and a defensive coach who has gotten a lot of respect for building a Texans team that won the division sort of fortunately last season. And then this year were, I think, undervalued, or at least the expectations were low considering how well they performed last year, and they won the division easily this year. You could argue it's because the rest of the AFC South is horrible. And so I don't know that we know so much about the Texans right now. We both took the Texans last year at home to Cleveland Browns, and Joe Flacco put on a show that made it over immediately with a million pick sixes. I don't think Justin Herbert's going to do that, but I do think this game is going to be a really low scoring boxing match because that's
Yeah.
what Harbaugh does. And I feel like that kind of fits the Texans mold too. We'll give our picks end of show, back to back, ping pong them. But is there anything else you want to discuss in this one before we move on?
No, I think that's a pretty good point. I think the if we go back to last year with the Flacco, the gunslinger type environment, I agree with you. I don't think Harbaugh is going to put Herbert in that situation, nor do I think that he needs to. I think like you don't need to feel like you have to put your foot on the gas to keep up with this Texans team. I think this is a pretty good matchup for the Chargers overall. Um, but it's a pretty good number too.
Okay, so pretty good number, meaning that I mean, there's
Like I
there's
think it's set. I think it's set at a good spot. To me, where I don't feel compelled either way.
so I like the Texans because they have a 3 point cushion here, which is
Yeah.
always meaningful, especially in a big home field environment, which maybe wouldn't be huge, but I think will be good for NFL standards in the playoffs, of course. We've got a total at 42 and a half, which I feel like we're going to see plenty of money on overs because they've been so profitable this entire season, and to the point where I don't think I'm going to be playing unders next season because it pretty much ruined what I think was going to be a good year for me on the sides. I haven't broken down the totals and sides enough, but I certainly have not won enough unders to celebrate, to say the least. And they also take years off your life, so I wouldn't recommend it. Trying to keep as much hair on our heads as possible. I think if we're looking at movement from this Wednesday night to an early Saturday afternoon kickoff, are you expecting this number to move off three?
No, I'm really not.
If it does, where does it go?
Um, I think right now you're seeing the juice on the Texans. I think similar to your thought of, hey, I'm gonna at the most key of numbers, I'm gonna take the Texans because they've been here before. Herbert's obviously been here before. It was a couple of years ago. Um, they've been here before. They home field advantage, so I get it. It's just I don't want to do that. I don't want to play that game. I mean, we could look back earlier in the season at the halfway point of the season. The Texans were like a 1 point favorite, 1 point underdog to the Buffalo Bills. I think
And
I mean, it's changed a
smashed
lot.
the Bills and smashed them.
Yeah,
Yes. That is what
it's changed
happens
a lot.
though with sandwich spots, and why paying attention to the NFL podcast on the Betting Push
Right.
Podcast Network with A_Snicker and the real_G Warner is a great guide for next season. We move
Yep.
next to Saturday night nightcap. The Pittsburgh Steelers 10 point underdogs right now to the Baltimore Ravens, totals 43 and a half. So one more point than the Chargers and Texans with Lamar Jackson.
The public side is just like, hey, man, I'm going to bet against Lamar Jackson in the playoffs until he proves otherwise, right?
Is it? I mean, I think we're talking a big rivalry here. Steelers play the Ravens tight, except for the Russell Wilson fumble extravaganza, which really opened up all wounds. I thought
Yeah.
the Steelers dominated the Ravens the first time they played, and that did not happen the second time. Uh, Felt like the total, I think, still came under, if I remember correctly. Though it was kind of miraculous because the Ravens, I
Was
thought, run
it?
out the clock late. I'll look that up while you answer that. Russell Wilson doesn't seem like he's losing his job to Josh Fields. So how do the Steelers stay in this game? Is that their game plan? Let's hang in.
Do they have to hang? I mean, to me, this is still about like what are the Ravens going to do? Are they going to have lemon booty again? Like, or are they going to like pucker up when it matters most? Todd Monken, I love him as an offensive coordinator.
You're right. Did
I
not stay under. Sorry, I'm confused. Another Ravens game. That definitely over, and Ravens side covered the last one.
Yes, with some turnover, like a pick six to really ice it. No,
Thank you.
I just like. It's terrible trending, right? If we just got done talking about two teams that were trending in different directions, and these two teams are also trending in different directions, except you're talking about a 10 point spread. Um, like I don't know the Ravens. I've done the last couple of years, I've been backing the Ravens in all of these spots, and they're not covering. Um, in a divisional matchup, yeah, I'm gonna take the Steelers. That would be my initial reaction at plus 10. It's a super like we could get into this cliche public dog type stuff, but like I'm gonna take plus 10.
Yeah, so I feel like the Steelers will be, I guess you're saying they're going to be popular. To me, it's always favorites are popular as an underdog under player. I'm forever waiting till a few seconds before kickoff, tip off, whatever to get in. I mean, I'd be surprised. We do see more juice currently on the Steelers right now, 10-point underdogs on the road at Baltimore. Weather should be probably pretty cold, but um, I think the biggest question for me is how do the Steelers perform after they basically had their schedule turn up? They didn't play a lot of AFC North games, excuse me, till like really late in the season,
Yep.
and they then lose the Browns. They beat the Bengals in a shootout, lose the or beat the Browns, but Jameis Winston was all handprints all over that one, fingerprints. Then Steelers blew him out, Ravens blew him out, Chiefs blew him out, and they somehow came back and covered a spread against the Bengals for A_Snickers best bet winner last week. Though I don't think you were expecting that for a lot of the game we were watching. Move to
No.
Sunday. We'll come back for each of these games later and add any more tidbits that come to us. Denver Broncos, 9.5 point underdogs on the road at Buffalo. Total is 46.5 in this one.
Oh man, I'm so excited for this one. And I know that that may be surprising, but like I'm really excited for the coaching matchup in this. I think Sean Payton is gonna expose again McDermott. Um,
You're not a big McDermott guy from the
no,
I
I'm
think the
really, really
podcast
not.
has been alive.
I'm just I think again, another huge number. I don't think we'll get to 10 on this one. It's what staying at 9.5. And although, yeah,
All the
and
juice on
defense have
Denver
all
right now. Yeah.
Broncos have the juice. Um, but to me, like, yes, it's always scary to bet against Josh Allen. And there's no one that's gonna be betting against Josh Allen in this matchup. Except for me. I'll be there. I'll be sitting in the corner by myself. Just yoo-hoo. With a rookie quarterback on the road. Although I should look at the weather.
All right, weather 31
Yeah, what's going on
degrees,
there?
20% precipitation, and your big wind guy,
Yeah,
6 miles an hour projected
nothing.
on Sunday.
That's nothing.
Yeah.
That's total. That's like that's perfect weather for upstate New York at this
I
time.
mean,
I mean, oh
there's
my
going to be a lot of
gosh.
suntan lotion out there in the
Can
crowd
you
for
have like
sure.
you really can't ask for a better like January day in Buffalo though, I feel like. I mean, if you have to pick them. Um,
Who does that
okay.
benefit?
I think the Broncos offense is going to have a lot of success. I think the Bills offense is going to have a lot of success. What's this total?
46.5. Not
46 and
bad.
a half. Pretty high for
We
that, but like
we saw the Rams score more than that against the Buffalo Bills just
yeah,
4 weeks
we
ago,
did.
though. Slightly different climate in that one.
Here's the thing though, like
Only snow in LA that night was in people's noses. Keep going.
uh like how what's the method for, often it's underdog, so you go under to a cover for both, you know what I mean?
Those under
Um
and underdogs do correlate, yes.
yes,
Hence
it's
the
usually correlation
awful
here.
life I live, yes.
Um I don't think we see that correlation here. I feel really good about an over here. Broncos 9.5 like would be my lean, but then I'm just waiting for, Broncos are putting up a good fight, and then, it's midway fourth quarter, they're down 7 and something stupid happens and it's toast. Um,
Let's cover these games and come back and with some tidbits before we make final picks. I think that might be
okay.
the best way to use our time. We'll move next. The Green Bay Packers, 4.5 point underdogs on the road at the Philadelphia Eagles. Totals 45.5 in this one. And we're expecting Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, and all the rested Philadelphia Eagles to return, unless I've missed some important nugget this week.
Nope. Yep, you nailed it. The quote Wednesday with Jalen Hurts looked incredible back on the practice field.
Ah,
Um,
if possible, if
yeah.
Jalen Hurts could look incredible, he looks about as good as he's ever looked. Right, right.
Um,
I see a questionable tag right now. Jordan Love limited in Wednesday's practice. Took an elbow, hit to the elbow in week 18, did not
yeah,
return. Hence,
yeah.
the Bears were able to beat the Green Bay Packers. And I think that's why the Packers are now in Philadelphia in this matchup, which is
Mhm.
definitely worse than heading to Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Definitely worse. Definitely worse. Um, the Packers have been funny with their injury report, especially with Jordan Love. I mean, it feels like he's been on it for most of the year, with a variety of ailments. Um, yeah, the Eagles are going to be the popular team here. We look back to last year where their season ended in really devastating fashion after the collapse down the stretch, and then just really a no-show against Tampa Bay. Um, that's not going to play into what happens here, but I think they're certainly going to remember what happened at the end of last year.
That was
Again,
actually your lone loser in the first two weekends
yeah,
of our NFL podcasts last year, which I'm surprised. I mean, you went 5-1 from what I see in front of me. I
for
low,
growing
low
up in
three.
Dallas, I seem to gravitate to Philadelphia a lot. Maybe
Yeah,
that's like,
I think it's your Go Birds back tattoo,
yeah.
lower back
But
tattoo.
like again, I mean, even before the season, like they were I feel like these are my two teams that you and I both talked about as NFC contenders. And it's a bummer that they're playing each other in the
It
wild
is.
card
Yeah.
round.
Yes, but at least
Um,
you get one through to the next round, I guess.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, I've been on the Eagles bandwagon throughout the year, so I'm not going to stop now.
Yeah, I think the problems with the Green Bay Packers for fantasy reasons, I think, is because they have a lot of options, which is a
Yeah,
good thing, good problem to have. And I think as part of their run in the playoffs last year, is you don't know who to defend. Jair Alexander's out for the year. That's probably a big loss. Maybe not so much against an Eagles team that doesn't seem to pass unless they have to, or if they want to. They really want to run the football. Um, I think there's some interest for me in the total under here, just because I think we saw Green Bay go on the road to Detroit and run the clock down below to like 1 second for the entire game. I think we
yeah.
like 1000% see that here. And the Eagles, they score really well, they defend really well, but they also take a lot of time on their drives. So I think that's my interest for now. Moving to Sunday night, we have to watch. Go ahead.
Do you want me to go? I have such a
Go ahead.
piece to
Just
this.
go. Go, go.
Okay, but even look at the splits of like Saquon Barkley, his run production, first half to second half. We're talking about Jalen Hurts, who hasn't played in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 weeks. This will be a third week. I can certainly see a really slow start to this game. I was burned by a first half under with Philly earlier this year. But again, another one like Saquon has taken a while to get going. Second halves have been dominant for him. I wonder, Jalen Hurts coming back, playoff game, if the offense might struggle at the start, which may be a live betting opportunity if you like the Eagles or if you're interested in the over, you may be able to find a better number if you wait in the
One.
first quarter.
I mean, that's all the pack. That's music to the Packers' ears. They're hoping that they can try to stay in this game as long as possible and then use
Yeah.
some weapons late. I think. I don't know that they're going to be able to move the football very much. Moving to Sunday night, we have the Washington Commanders, 3-point underdogs at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Total is 50.5. Clearly the biggest offensive expectations in this one on the entire schedule is they're more than a touchdown higher than that Chargers Texans I guess sleepover game. What do we think about the Commanders kind of limping into the playoffs? They did beat the Cowboys to clinch this position, essentially stay ahead of the Green Bay Packers, though I guess since they lost, they didn't even need to win. And did so with Marcus Mariota. The Bucks, on the other hand, did everything they could to lose their place, but the Falcons ended up losing in overtime to the Panthers because whenever I bet them, and I just can't do it a second week, they go and win straight up.
Bryce Young, people wrote him off. Um, Man, this is a fun one. It's such a unique spot for the Commanders. They haven't been to the playoffs in 5 years, and they're
Long
doing it
time.
with a completely different team. Do what?
A lot of Daniel Snyder binocular action between playoff appearances, I think.
That's right. It's been a long time. And Tampa, getting another home game, getting the Sunday night game. Um, I don't think you know what? This is actually the NFC has two games that these are all rematches, but also the first two were like the first week of the regular season. Both of these teams faced each other. And
Yep.
Tampa dominated in the opener,
I think we're
Jaden
only a
Daniels.
3.5 point favorite to a debuting Jaden Daniels, who was awesome afterwards, but that
Another
seemed like
three-point
less than one.
favorites
Yeah,
after we know what Jaden Daniels is. We
right.
also know what Cliff Kingsbury's offense is as it gets deeper into the season. Um,
We did see the Commanders really struggle to hold a lead with the Falcons and kind of struggle in a game until the Falcons just didn't show up
yeah,
in the second half.
But like I mean, we look to the end of the year, right? So the Falcons game, yes. Even the week before that, I think against the Saints, they were on in the Superdome. They were like 6 or 7 point underdogs. They don't cover, and it gets close late. They're in a different role this week. You know what I mean? Like towards the end of the season, they were getting these big old favorite numbers. Um, and it changed. We talk about it all the time, how different the favorite to an underdog role is, especially for a young team and a dynamic quarterback that's making his postseason debut. Um, yeah, I mean, Washington is interesting to me with this one. Because of that role and getting the points there, but I assume I'm probably in the majority on that as well.
Well, if you're looking at the easiest home favorite on the board, it's certainly the Bucks, only 3 points, and Sunday Night Football. I imagine if you're looking for a Washington Commanders bet, they are more juice currently at BetOnline, SportsBetting.ag. If you don't have an account on either of those sites, go make a first time deposit. There's links in the podcast descriptions on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on YouTube. But the it feels to me like the Tampa Bay Bucks are going to get bet, and I would think if you want the Commanders, you might want to wait.
You
Moving to
think
Monday
so?
Monday
Okay.
Night Football, the Minnesota Vikings coming off their shellacking at the hands of the Detroit Lions. I guess goal line stand defense. Vikings 1 point favorites right now at the Rams. This number has moved significantly, though the numbers don't mean a ton below 3. I saw I think the first number I saw actually was Minnesota 2 point favorites, moved all the way down to pick 'em. Now we're back to Minnesota -1. Total is 47 and a half on this matchup. Uh,
Hmm.
Vikings got inside the 5 yard line. It felt like as they wished, but couldn't. I don't know. I don't really know if I blame Sam Darnold for not being able to convert. I think it was a lot of just the Vikings refusing to run the football. Maybe they're really like not able to do so. But I thought in the middle of the field they were cutting up the Lions, and unfortunately, as it got closer, they were just throwing the ball every down and they were struggling to get any sort of players open. Plus, we're struggling dealing with a pass rush because the Lions were just blitzing the whole time. I would imagine the Rams can kind of take something from that strategy. The Vikings did lose at the Los Angeles Rams, as I think a 3 point favorite, 3.5 point favorite earlier this year on Thursday Night Football. That was a kind of surprise return game for Puka Nacua and also Cooper Kupp, who has been lost for a long time now. The Rams didn't play anybody in week 18 because they had nothing to play for, though they actually did because they could have had a potentially better slot here, but they didn't. And I guess your thoughts on the Vikings 1 point favorites coming off that all or nothing game for the 1 seed and that total of 47 and a half points.
Yeah, I think it's different. We've talked about Sean McVay as more of a out of the box or analytically minded thinker. Um, So yeah, there's a lot of angles to this one. I think I've talked before about wanting to be against Minnesota as we got to the stretch run. I didn't follow that advice or I didn't follow that thinking last week. And I agree with you. I don't think it's all on Sam Darnold. I thought the play calling was pretty suspect. That if you're at the 5 yard line, first and goal, and you run it once, you get 2 yards, and then you just give up on that. Was perplexing to me because if you flip it to the other mindset, I think Detroit, you know what I mean, is just like, okay, well, we got 4 downs to get 5 yards. Let's pound it here. Um, and so I thought some of those decisions they put Sam Darnold in a bad spot. He was not great. He was certainly missing high and it felt like the Sam Darnold that we had seen in years past. Which is part of like why we talked about potentially fading them. I think yeah, it's a tough spot because you've put everything into being that number one seed. You don't get close, or you get close, but you're not really all that close because you get blown out. Then you have to go to the West Coast. At least you get that Monday game. Whereas as McVay, I think looked at it and was like, okay, out of all these teams that are left, I don't see like one where we have to absolutely avoid it. So with only one team getting a bye now in the playoffs, it kind of makes sense to be like, hey, let's just basically give our guys a bye week going into this playoffs because um, it's just it's too much of an advantage for that 1 seed. So I can respect the game there. If I go back and think about that Thursday night game where the Rams really put it to them, you talked about the receivers coming back. I also just think it was a terrible. It was a situational spot that was a disaster for Minnesota, having to go all the way across the country. I think they just played maybe Detroit the week before, like that It was the first Detroit game when it was a bad situation for them, and they got their butts kicked. But this week feels different. It feels like if you're just asking Minnesota to win the game, I feel pretty good about that.
So I was pretty in love with the Vikings, really liked them Sunday Night Football, and of course was all over them the weekend before against the Packers, which I do realize there's a psychology to that. But felt like we were getting a ton of value on the Vikings, especially because they had a blowout on the scoreboard for a while and then ended up only holding on to win by 2 points late. And I thought that would make the Vikings even cheaper, which was great. 3 point win at the Seahawks, 18 points over the Bears. Who cares? 21 points over the Falcons. Who cares? 1 point over the Cardinals, a comeback. I don't know that I've been as concerned about the Vikings because Sam Darnold to me has been awesome. Found the QB whisperer in Kevin O'Connell, who I think is already locked in as coach of the year. My question though is, I mean, this to me doesn't feel like a great matchup. Yes, they already lost here in LA on that Thursday night football game, 30-20. That was after a 2 point loss to the Detroit Lions at home just 4 days prior. Um, do you feel like this might be a really bad matchup for the Vikings? Because to me, the first time, it seemed like the Puka Nakua Cooper Cup show maybe the Vikings weren't ready for it because really what Brian Flores' defense is the masked blitzing and not knowing who's coming and not knowing how to set up your line and set your running back, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
But Sean McVay, we've seen is an awesome coach and can fix those things. Is
yeah,
that the matchup there? Is the mind of Sean McVay? Is that the matchup that's the problem?
yeah, and that's fair. And also you have Stafford um, and you have like a veteran running back who's been there long enough, 3 years. So yeah, you're right. Like there are some mismatches. I just like something I wish I could, and I might be able to eloquently put into words in these last couple minutes here, but I just remember that game so vividly and
Which
just thinking like, man, the Rams are the side tonight. Like there's no doubt about it. They just felt, but to me, it did not feel like, oh, this is a bad matchup. It just felt like, oh, this is a good situational spot. And that's the best way I can put it is like just watching it, the eye test to me was not like, oh man, this is not, if these teams played 10 times, the Rams are winning nine of them. It just felt like a very classic NFL game, especially a Thursday night game where you've got the home team that's got all the momentum, that gets some of their key players back, and they're just cruising.
yeah,
They're more physical. And then I think that was like yeah, that was like a fit, like Sam Darnold face mask. He was like, there was a pretty, there's a
yes,
referee
yes.
controversy every game, but like there was an issue like late. I just think maybe people might be looking back to that and misremembering how it all went down.
So I think that's what I mean. It's hard to say how that all worked out, but I feel like the issue here is that we're seeing the Vikings now 5 seed and the Rams not choosing to play anybody, and then unfortunately having to deal with that 5 seed coming into town. So this was our graphic from last year. If it's coming up, I did take some liberty with Photoshop on my own picture. I actually made a gray background. Everything else is legit from the photos out there. We see six fire emojis on A_Snickers face. If you're
Yeah.
watching the video version, go check in on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or on YouTube at the Real_G Warner, Apple Podcast, and on Spotify called Betting the Pitch, as you can see at the top. But I collected our picks. So this was A_Snicker 5-1 in the first 2 weekends. So we're expecting 6-0 this year because we only improve. I went 3-3, so shame on me. But now that I've done that in there, as I figured out how to use Zoom just barely, hopefully we're now back to us. I'm going to now go through and we're going to go through and make our picks for each of the games. If you haven't followed us on Twitter, do so at the Real_G Warner, at A_Snicker. Of course, follow the podcast, Betting the Pitch. We could use a 5-star review. It's huge on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. Also, if you want to subscribe at the Real_G Warner on YouTube, plus on Instagram to get our 1 minute videos. And that way you will get our best bets. So we're going to go through, give our picks, one pick from each game, side or total. And then we'll go through and give our best bet coming up at the end. So we'll start on Saturday, January 11th with the Los Angeles Chargers 3 point favorites at the Houston Texans. Total is 42.5 points.
I'm going to take the Chargers here.
All right, Chargers -3 for A underscore Snicker. I'm going to go with under 42.5 on this matchup. So we'll next move to the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens Saturday evening. 10-point favorites are the Baltimore Ravens. Total is 43.5.
Hmm. Give me the Steelers.
Pittsburgh +10. I will go with under 43.5 as I'm going to have just a fun Saturday. We'll move next.
So here, you're just not going to be able to watch the games. That's the problem.
I, surprisingly, I do enjoy rooting for punts. And
Just sweating out and under. That's like, I just don't do it, man. I'm just like, okay, if I like this under, I'm not watching. I'll watch the replay.
well, in the NFL playoffs, the problem is that the offenses are going to be trying to score the whole game, which does potentially cause some problems. As we've seen
Yes.
some unders come, not many have come in this year, but some have come in from teams kneeling at the 1 yard line because they were just running the clock out the last quarter, it felt like. Would love that again, Philadelphia Eagles, or actually Atlanta Falcons. 2 times it's happened for me. Move to Sunday with the Denver Broncos 9.5-point underdogs. Total is 46.5 at Buffalo.
I'm going to go over 46 and a half.
Finally on a total. Over 46.5 for underscore Sticker.
We're going to have a battle?
I will join him. No, I'm
Oh, okay. All right.
taking points in this one. I think the Broncos stay in this game. As you mentioned, under and underdog usually correlate. I think under dog and over because the Denver Broncos score enough. And I think they put a big concern into the Bills. And if they don't, the Bills could hit this over. Maybe not themselves, but with a little bit of help.
Right.
To the next matchup, with the Green Bay Packers 4.5-point underdogs at Philadelphia. Totals 45.5.
Hmm. Let's go Eagles.
Eagles -4.5. I already typed that in for you, but thank you for the drama and waiting. I will join you on the Philadelphia Eagles 4.5-point favorites. For the Sunday nightcap, the Washington Commanders 3-point underdogs at Tampa. Total is 50.5.
A big total.
It is a big total.
Yeah, but these teams that they can let's go with the Commanders. Why not?
Commanders +3 for A underscore Snicker. I'm gonna go with that's hard. I'm vacillating between the Bucks -3 and the over 50.5. I'll go over 50.5 because I'm just a big points guy and favorites on Sunday, apparently. As anyone who
No
listens to
doubt.
my podcast know, that's exactly who I am.
Especially the primetime spots.
Especially the primetime spots. Get in now, before our kickoff. Before we get to our best bets, we have Monday, January 13th, Minnesota Vikings 1-point favorites at the Los Angeles Rams. Total is 47.5. Before you answer, what do we think the crowd's going to be like in this matchup?
Oh yeah. Well, here's the thing though, like with what's going on out in LA, like we don't know if this game's going to be in LA. Could be in Arizona. And if
That
that's the
would be
case,
that. Whoa. I mean, all lines would be canceled, I guess, and we'll change our picks for the graphic.
yeah. But how much home field are they really giving the Rams? Just because they get to sleep in their own bed, but the whole city's on fire? Like
Yeah, they've
some
had to
scary stuff out
evacuate.
there.
Everyone's at a hotel.
Um,
Maybe they're at an Airbnb.
yeah, I mean, we're golly. We're recording this Wednesday night, so we don't know, obviously I hope everything is okay out on the West Coast. I'll take the Vikings. This is one of those like it could be egg on my face type deal, but I have a strong conviction with it, so I'm gonna go Vikings -1.
I like the Vikings as well. I'm not worried about egg in my face. I'm just trying to keep the hair in my head. And now it's time for our
Me
best
too.
bets at A underscore Snicker with his winner last week, our fill-in Tony at Tony. Not really on Twitter. He doesn't have one, but he was a winner. So I've been stinking it up the joint lately. Time to get some winners. We'll start with A underscore Snicker for his best bet from the Super Wildcard weekend, if that's what we're branding it.
Well, it's the one we talked about. I've already made the pick. I'm on it in both ways. Let's go with the Denver Broncos over 46 and a half on Sunday afternoon.
Over 46.5 for A underscore Snicker, Denver Broncos at the Buffalo Bills. That is tempting to join you there because I did join you on our sides, but I want to make sure that you get that winner and get my stink off of it. It's I feel like there's so many on this list and it's hard to pick because we go into this NFL weekend and I mean, I think everyone's gonna be glued to the TV. Going in from college football playoff into the
Yeah,
NFL. That's
we've got a
that's
great week ahead of us.
pretty good slate to say the least. But I think that's all going to work in the same direction. And I think it's time for me to make my recordings. So it's probably impossible to pick the Monday night game because that probably gets canceled if it or it could get canceled. So
Yeah, it'd be tough for sure.
let's do it. Three, two, one. Hey, this is real underscore G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. This is the NFL Playoff Edition podcast on the Betting the Pitch Podcast Network with A underscore Snicker. He won his best last week. He's going with the over 46.5 Denver Broncos at the Buffalo Bills in this wild card weekend. For my best bet at the real underscore G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube, I'm going to go with those Philadelphia Eagles, 4.5 point favorites, the Green Bay Packers. I just don't think that Jordan Love's healthy. I don't think the Packers look healthy. I think they're going to really struggle with the Philadelphia Eagles offense. So go grab the Philadelphia Eagles 4.5 point favorites. And that'll do it for this episode. We'll see you next week, hopefully celebrating some winners. And make sure you join us for our predictions on where lines will move, where everything will go. And stay tuned at Betting the Pitch Podcast Network. That'll do it for this episode. Thank you for tuning in. At Andrew Sticker, have a great evening. I'm going to go eat some dinner, and we will talk to you soon. Stop. Stop.